What if this video turned into a live trivia game you play with your friends right now? But this isn't just a video. Scan the QR code, and instantly you're competing live, climbing the leaderboard, and hitting your friends with power-ups. This is the first fully interactive quiz on YouTube, with new games every day. Scan now, or fall behind.
Time to travel through history. Are you smarter than the timeline?
We've reached the difficult stage for ages 18 plus. Take your time.
Are you ready to start? Here we go.
Which of these were American generals who served in World War II? Sort these WWII tanks by crew size, smallest to largest. What can you tell me about the Normandy landings on D-Day? Which country manufactured the famous Tiger I tank used in World War II? The Battle of Kursk in 1943 is remembered as the largest what in history? Place a marker within 100 kilometers of where the Battle of the Bulge was fought. Which German tank was considered the most feared armoured vehicle on the Eastern Front? What semi-automatic rifle was standard issue for American infantry throughout World War II? In what year was Auschwitz-Birkenau liberated by Soviet forces? Which of these were Soviet weapons used in World War II? Which country's naval base was attacked by Japan on December 7, 1941? Place a marker within 250 kilometers of the island that was attacked by Japan on December 7, 1941. The Guadalcanal campaign of 1942 to 1943 was fought on islands belonging to which country? Sort these specific battles from earliest to latest start date. General Douglas MacArthur famously vowed to return to which country after retreating in 1942? Which of these were German military commanders in World War II? What German machine gun was feared for its exceptionally high rate of fire on all fronts? Which of these battles took place in the Pacific Theatre in 1942? Bernard Montgomery defeated Rommel at which decisive North African battle in late 1942? Charles de Gaulle led which French resistance organisation from London during the German occupation? That's the end of this round. Let's check your score. Let's keep going. Ready? Let's start the next round. Mark within 200 kilometers of the city where the final major Soviet assault ended the war in Europe in May 1945. At which concentration camp did Soviet forces make the first major liberation of a Nazi death camp in July 1944? How many months did the Guadalcanal campaign last? In what year did the Battle of Stalingrad begin? Which Soviet tank proved decisive on the Eastern Front due to its balance of firepower, armour, and reliability? In what year did the Battle of Kursk take place? How many Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day? What was the primary purpose of the Soviet Katyusha rocket launcher? The Battle of Britain in 1940 was an aerial campaign fought to defend which country? The Battle of Britain was primarily fought between which two air forces? Which Japanese fighter aircraft dominated the early Pacific Air War due to its superior range and maneuverability? Sort these WWII military leaders by the year they died, earliest to latest. The Katyn massacre of 1940 involved the execution of approximately how many Polish officers and intellectuals by the Soviet NKVD? How many Japanese aircraft took part in the attack on Pearl Harbor? Answer to the nearest 10. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 was Germany's last major offensive on which front? Which US general commanded Allied forces during the D-Day invasion and later became Supreme Commander of NATO? Which concentration camps were liberated by Allied forces in 1945? Sort these WW2 generals from the country that entered WW2 earliest to latest. The Battle of Iwo Jima is associated with which iconic wartime photograph? Which of these battles were part of the final stages of the war in Europe in 1945? That's the end of this round. Let's check your score. Let's keep going. Ready? Let's start the next round. Which concentration camp was liberated by US forces on April 29, 1945, and was the oldest Nazi camp? The P-51 Mustang's greatest strategic contribution was its ability to do what? Which of these were British weapons or aircraft used in World War II? Mark within 500 kilometers of the naval battle that turned the tide in the Pacific in June 1942. Which German general was nicknamed the Desert Fox for his campaigns in North Africa? What was the code name for Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941? Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who planned the attack on Pearl Harbor, served as commander of which country's navy? In what year was the Tiger I tank first introduced into combat? Which British aircraft became the symbol of RAF resistance during the Battle of Britain? Mark within 300 kilometers of the island where the Guadalcanal campaign was fought from 1942 to 1943. Which American admiral commanded US Pacific Fleet forces and accepted Japan's formal surrender in 1945? Which battle effectively ended Japanese naval air power in the Pacific? Which country was home to the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, liberated in January 1945? What do you know about the causes that led to the start of World War II? The Holocaust resulted in the systematic murder of approximately how many Jewish people by Nazi Germany? Sort these WW2 liberations from earliest to latest. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941 was planned and led by which Japanese admiral? Sort these causes of WW2 in chronological order, earliest to latest. The D-Day Normandy landings of June 1944 took place on the beaches of which country? Which treaties' harsh terms on Germany after World War I are widely seen as contributing to the rise of Nazism? That's the end of this round. Let's check your score. Let's keep going. Ready? Let's start the next round. Mark within a tolerance of 200 kilometers of the city where the Battle of Stalingrad was fought. The Guadalcanal campaign marked the first major Allied offensive against which Axis power? Which city was the site of the largest and deadliest battle on the Eastern Front? Sort these WWII battles from earliest to latest start date. In what year did Germany invade Poland, marking the start of World War II? Who commanded Soviet forces during the Battle of Stalingrad and later at Kursk? Which country was the site of the brutal Battle of Stalingrad in 1942 and 1943? What was the code name for the Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944? General Georgy Zhukov led the defense of his nation and later captured Berlin. Which country did he serve? Mark the approximate site of the Normandy beach landings on D-Day, June 6, 1944, within 200 kilometers. Place a marker within 250 kilometers where the Battle of El Alamein took place. Place a marker within 250 kilometers of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. What do you know about the Battle of Stalingrad? Sort these events from earliest to latest. Mark within 200 kilometers of the island where the US Marines raised the flag in February 1945. How many aircraft did Germany lose during the Battle of Britain? The Battle of El Alamein, a turning point in the North African campaign, was fought in which country? Sort these WW2 aircraft by maximum speed, slowest to fastest. What position did Winston Churchill hold during most of World War II? Which famous phrase is attributed to Winston Churchill during World War II?
And that's the final question. How many did you get right? Check your results in the app and see your final score. Let us know in the comments how you did. Challenge your friends and don't forget to like and subscribe for more quizzes.